This week, we are going to turn our attention to a group level concept, high-performing teams. This lecture has been divided into 4 parts. In part 1, we are going to define groups and teams and take a look at some of the differences between groups and teams. One of the things that has drastically changed the way we work is the trend of using groups and teams. For our purposes in this course, a group is defined as 2 or more people who are connected by social ties. Some of these social ties or relationships are weak, while others are strong. Members of some groups interact frequently, while members of other groups interact only occasionally. Groups also vary in purpose, size, structure, and roles. Work groups interact primarily to share information and make decisions that help group members perform their job. Usually, members are individually held accountable for the results instead of as a group. They also tend to have random and varied skills instead of having the KSAOs that are needed for the job. Work teams are slightly different. Work teams are a type of group that create what we call positive synergy through their coordinated efforts. As individuals contribute to the team, what the team is able to produce is greater than the sum of those individual parts or contributions. If 5 team members put in an hour each, we would normally have 5 hours worth of work. But in a work team, those same 5 people who contribute an hour end up producing 10 hours worth of work because of how well they work together. They're able to coordinate their efforts so the whole team benefits. Also, not only are the members of work teams held accountable for their actions, but the entire group is also held accountable for what it produces. What this means is that there is usually a manager or a leader on the outside of the team who helps hold people accountable, but the members of the team are also responsible for holding each other accountable in a self-managing type of way. Members of work teams tend to have complementary skills in that they were selected or trained to do a specific role or function on the team. Working in teams requires employees to cooperate with each other, to share information, to resolve conflicts, and to put their personal interests aside for the greater good of the team. In order for teams to function properly and optimally, we have to be careful about selection, development, rewards, training, and performance measurement. All of the HR functions that we've learned about this semester are applicable to groups and teams in the workplace. But it's even more important for work teams if we want that positive synergy, if we want that high performance. Let's take a quick look at the strengths and weaknesses of teams. Teams, not groups, can achieve more than what any individual can do and more than what a group would do. Teams are adaptable and flexible. Because they are a well-oiled machine, they can change when the external environment requires change. They tend to be democratic in that every group member has a say in what the group does, how the group does it, the group's goals, and so there tends to be a high level of employee involvement and collaboration in teams versus groups. The weaknesses of teams. They tend to require more time, energy, resources, communication, training, and so on. They also tend to demand more of individual members. The communication, for instance, in a team is more demanding than it would be in a group. Team members tend to communicate more frequently, more consistently, and more effectively than members of a group, in part because they've been trained to do so. Because team members work so closely together and because there is such a high level of collaboration, involvement, engagement, communication, there is also a greater chance for conflict to emerge. Although work teams tend to produce more, they tend to cost more, and they tend to increase the level of conflict that individual members experience. In part because involvement, collaboration, communication are higher than they are in a work group. So before you rush to implement teams in your workplace, you need to carefully assess whether the task, the project, the work will benefit from a collective effort. How do we know whether individuals or teams would be better? Here are a series of questions to help you make that decision. Can the work be done better by more than one person? A good indicator of this is the complexity of the work and the need for different perspectives. Simple tasks that don't require a lot of input are probably best completed by individual people. Does the work create a common purpose or a common set of goals that is more than the aggregate of individual goals? Think of a vehicle service department. They have customer service representatives, mechanics, parts specialists, sales representatives. Each person has their own goals within their role, but no one could do all of the work and make a customer happy. It makes sense to have a team in this particular situation. Are the employees interdependent? It makes sense to use teams when the tasks are interdependent. The success of the whole team depends on the success of each task. When the success of the whole depends on the success of each task, and when the success of one task depends on the success of other tasks. When the tasks are independent and not reliant on other tasks in order to complete the whole job, individuals can be used. Back to the service department example, no one employee could do the job. The mechanics depend on everyone else to put cars in the shop. The customer service representatives depend on everyone else to do their jobs so that they don't get more phone calls from unhappy customers. And finally, do the benefits of using teams exceed the costs? We just learned about some of these costs. There are situations where a team might be useful, but the organization doesn't have the funds or the space to hire a team. If the answer to all three of these questions is the work complex, does the work create a common set of goals, are tasks interdependent, and do the benefits of using teams exceed the costs? If you answer yes to all of these questions, then you have 4 good reasons to use teams.